second day of, last day of our workshop. Okay, the first session today is about applications of cooperative game theory in business science. Okay, and our first speaker is Ming Meng, and he will talk about multiplayer applications in presence of diminishing market contributions, the core, the materials, and application in management science. Okay, Ming, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm very glad to join this workshop. This is my first time to join this workshop. It's a great pleasure to get new friends. And also, I want to thank Anthony for scheduling my presentation before my jet lag problem here. So, okay. Now, this paper is application of cooperative game theory in marine science. Actually, we consider the law of diminishing returns. Based on the law of diminishing returns, we identify new class of cooperative game theory, cooperative games. So we call this new class of cooperative games diminishing marginal contribution games. So simply we call them DMC games. So in this paper, we identify these new games, DMC games. We give definition. We find many properties for these new games, and then we provide applications of these new games in marine science. Okay. Now this is outline. First one, we mentioned several research questions we will address in this paper. We have around 6 or 7 research questions. Okay. Now, next one, we will define DMC games. We will use exploration to define what DMC games are. And the next one, we consider DMC games with long-empty core and the DMC games with empty core. For long-empty core case, we will analyze the core nucleus and to weight the nucleus and also Shapley value. For the core, because an interesting subject, the interesting question is to find the condition for non-emptiness of the core. Currently, we have to use BS theorem to check the non-emptiness of the core. It's not easy to use if the number of players is very large. But in this paper for DMC games, we derived a closed form condition for checking non-emptiness of the core. And the next one, for nucleus. As you know, it's not easy to calculate the nucleus. We usually need to solve linear programming problems to find the nucleus. But for DMC games, we can find analytical closed form formula solution for nucleus. And also we consider to weight the nucleus. And also we will consider Shapley value. Because the Shapley value sometimes is outside of the core, but for DMC games we derive the condition for Shapley value is in the core. And also we compare Shapley value and the nucleus, these two solution concepts. Okay. Next one, for an empty core case, we calculate the least core value. Because this is the new class of the core game. So what we should do is to analyze, so we investigate the properties of these games. Okay. And then the last one, we consider applications of these games in marine science, because a very natural question is, do we have DMC games in reality? So we give 3 examples. First one, code sharing, group buying, and scheduling profit games. Okay. Under some condition, realistic conditions, they are DMC games. Okay. Now, so this is research questions. Do we have one class of n-player collisional games? We can derive an analytical condition to check non-emptiness of the core. This is the first question. The second one, can we obtain analytical closed form nuclear solution? And also, do we have analytical condition under which Shapley value is in the core? Okay. So, do we have this kind of core games? So we find DMC games, we can find a solution for these 3 questions. Next one, what are extreme points of the core of DMC games with non-empty core? If DMC games has non-empty core, what is extreme points? In core game theory area, some people investigate extreme points. For an ordinary core game, the maximum number of extreme points is n. Fractorial is really very large. Okay, so but now for DMC games, we already find the maximum number of extreme points is just the n. It's not the n factorial, so it's much smaller. Okay. Next one for DMC games with non-empty core, can we obtain a weight nucleus? Okay, this is a generalization of nucleus solution. So can we find, based on two new definition of the weighted access, we already find the weighted nucleus. Okay, we found two solutions. Next one, Shapley value. Is Shapley value always in the core of DMC game with a non-empty core? So we already find, we also find sufficient condition. Okay. And the next one, because suppose Shapley value is in the core, so we have a nucleus allocation, we have a Shapley value log allocation. So because the pi is fixed, right? V of n, a value of a grand collision, this is fixed. So if we use two allocation schemes, I believe some people get more from Shapley, some people get more from the nucleus. So from a very science perspective, we would like to know which player gets more from Shapley value based on allocation, which player get more from nucleus based on allocation. So we also find that there is relevant results. Okay. Next one, if your DMC game has an empty core, what is this core value? So far, we have no closed form solution for this core value. Under some condition, maybe a mild condition, we find this core value formula. Okay. And next one, so we consider applications. So in this paper, we mainly consider these 6 questions. Okay. Now this is the definition. What is definition marginal contribution? Means when one player joins a larger coalition, this player's marginal contribution to this coalition is smaller. Okay, so this is based on the law of division returns. So we will find this one. Okay, S smaller than T. T includes S. This guy joins S. So this is marginal contribution of this person. And this person joins a bigger coalition, but this marginal contribution is smaller. So this is the division marginal contribution games, DMC games. So it's based on the law of division returns. Next one is core. So this is the definition of the core. So as usual, in economics area, we always use BS theorem to check non-emptiness of the core. So for DMC games, we find this simple inequality for checking. So this is sufficient, necessary, and also sufficient condition for checking non-emptiness of the core for DMC games. It's very simple. Now you will see, this is the initial result. I rewrote this result in this expression. You will find this is a marginal contribution to grand coalition. The sum of all people's marginal contribution to grand coalition is bigger than value of grand coalition. Now if this condition is satisfied, DMC games always has a non-empty core. So I think this is a simple method. We just use this expression inequality to check non-emptiness of the core. Next one, extreme points. Actually, this proof, mathematical proof, is very difficult. Okay, I spent a long time with this one. Honestly speaking, before I submitted this paper to Marine Science Journal, I had no idea about the extreme points. So one referee suggests that I should do some works for extreme points. So I find the number. These two persons already showed for ordinary cooperative games, the maximum number is n factorial. Okay, so this is a big number, big number. So what is the maximum number of extreme points for DMC games with the non-empty core? So we find, before I deliver these results, I give a definition of these extreme points. Extreme points come from solving n different types of collision. The type of collision is the allocation to all players in this, for a collision, allocation to each player in this collision equals the value of this collision. This is the types collisions. So definitely, if we have n different type of collisions, you can find the unique extreme points. Okay. So how many extreme points we can find for DMC games? So we got these results. For DMC games, if the core is non-empty, maximum number of extreme points is n, much smaller than this one, much smaller. And also, for this condition, there is no extreme points. For this condition, there is only one. But if this condition is satisfied, we have different results. Next one, nucleus. Actually, my specialization is analysis of the nucleus. Yeah, I always work on finding the closed form solution of the nucleus. It's not easy to find the nucleus because we always need to solve some linear programming problems. Okay. So this is the definition. Nucleus is based on minimization of unhappiness of most unhappy collisions, second most unhappy collisions, etc. Okay. Now, we have a desirable properties with nucleus. Nucleus always uniquely exists in the core, so this is a desirable property. We always want to get this result. And in my papers, in some of my papers, I have already applied the nucleus concepts to analyze some business problems. Okay, for example, this is my paper. Now, there is computational difficulty. Okay, it's not easy to do it. You must numerically find a solution. Definitely, in various science area, in order to find analytical solution for business problem, I need analytical closed form results for the nucleus. So definitely, so this difficulty largely limits application of these concepts in various science area. Now, this is our solution. For DMC game, if core is not empty, we have this analytical solution. It's simple. Okay, simple. Now, I rewrite this analytical solution to this expression. So we can find this is EANHC solution. This one. EANHC solution. So this really surprised the referees. They find why the analytical solution of the nucleus is identical to EANHC solution. Okay, so this is non-separable parts. This is a separable part. Okay, so this is EANHC. And also, because in order to save time, I didn't mention everything in my paper in these presentations. Actually, the referee also asked me, because Jason also developed a class of core games. That class of core game is one convex games. For the one convex game, analytical solution of the nucleus is also EANHC, same as my DMC games. So they asked me what the difference. After carefully investigating this problem, I found actually one convex game and my DMC games really have an overlap, but not completely overlap. Okay, we cannot say this class belongs to the other class or this class belongs to the other one. So they really have an overlap, but not completely. Okay, so interesting results. Both for both class of classes, nucleus solution is same as EANHC. Next one, I consider the weight value. Weight the nucleus. Because this is generalization of nucleus, so I don't believe there is a broader application. So I would like to investigate this one. Ho, just in last year, he is a research students, PhD students. Now he is working in China. Now Ho extended the concept of EA and SC to weight the EA and SC value. Now this is new exploration, is more general form. Now, in this more general form, Ho suggests this parameter, alpha. Alpha is player I's selfishness level. So this is players' marginal contribution. But this guy may not request the full payments based on the marginal contribution. So if this alpha is smaller than 1, smaller than or equal to 1, so possibly this is smaller than 1. Smaller than 1 means this person will get a part of marginal contribution, not all. Okay, so this is selfish level. And my question is it possible for the weighted EA and SC value to be a weighted nucleus for n-player DMC games? So for DMC games, can we find for some DMC games our weighted nucleus will be identified to this one? Is it possible? So we need to solve this problem. Now, in order to address this question, we did some technical change for the access. Now this is ordinary access. Ordinary access is the value of x minus all players' allocations, sum of all players' allocations. So here I rewrite this ordinary access to this expression. Is correct, right? Is correct. I will write this one to here. And continue. I will rewrite this one to this expression for any collision. Now, for any collision, you can find this is a value for S plus union player I. So this is the marginal contribution of player I. So please note, in Ho's original definition for weight, the NEA and SC, this person just assumed alpha for the marginal contribution to grand collision. But here, for any collision, now this player is a marginal contribution. I would like to add a new parameter here, not just for the collision, the contribution to grand collision. For any collision, we define a parameter here. So now this is the new definition of weighted access. Here I add here this parameter. This parameter is for selfishness of a label for this collision. Okay, for this collision. Now, next one, I have this definition. This is delta. Delta is 1 minus alpha times this marginal contribution. You know, alpha times this marginal contribution, this is selfishness. So this is what player I wants to get. But 1 minus this one, this means after we allocate this money to player I, and the remaining one will be given to collision S. Okay, so this is called S average external value, but this is not created by S, right? External, because this is other player, our player I's, player J's marginal contribution from this additional player's marginal contribution. This collision share apart. So this is called average external value. Now, if this external value is not decreasing in the size of the collision, I think this is true because the collision size is larger, this collision is more powerful. Okay, so this collision should get more. So, not decreasing in the size, we will find the core is not empty if and only if this condition. You will see this condition is a generalization of original condition for checking non-emptiness of the core, right? So if we assume alpha is only 1, this inequality is reduced to original one. So this is more general. And also we have the weight nucleus, but we we find that this nucleus now is the same as a suggestion from whole. Okay, the weight that EANHC. So this is the first one. Definitely based on different definition of the weighted axis, we have different weighted nucleus. So this is the first one. Second one is Dirks and Haller in 1999. They made a definition of the weighted axis. Here, this one. Now, if tau is 1, this is the original axis. Now, they suggest this parameter to represent dissatisfaction of a collision S. Okay, dissatisfaction. So this is more general. And also, they proved a weighted nucleus satisfying non-clear out MPO property. Okay, property exists if and only if this condition is satisfied. Okay, but they already defined this weighted nucleus, but they didn't find the nucleus. Okay, they just make a definition here. So my question is, do we have analytical solution of the weighted nucleus based on their definition of the weighted axis? If I use this weighted axis, can we find a closed form solution for weighted nucleus? So this is my question. Okay, finally we got these results. Necessary and sufficient condition for checking non-abilities for the core is same. Okay, no difference. Same as before original one. Okay, and also we have this nucleus solution. This is a closed form solution. You can find there is one part here. This is a proportion. Okay, it's proportion. So it's based on the definition given by these two authors. Yeah, authors. So far we have two nuclei for DMC games. Next one, how about Shapley value? Shapley value sometimes out of the core. So I would like to know under what condition Shapley value exists in the core. So we have this sufficient condition. And we derive this sufficient condition for DMC games. If this condition is satisfied, the result Shapley value must be in the core. Okay. However, this condition is hard to understand. We cannot understand what does it means. Okay. So we rewrite this condition to this part. Luckily, okay. We find GS. This was also defined by Jason. Okay. This is called the gap of the collision S. This is a gap. So we find for any collision, the gap of the collision is bigger than or equal to average of all players in this collision gap. Okay. Now, so this is individual gap. So this is average of all players individual gaps. Now, if this average one is smaller than this collisional gap, Shapley value must be in the core. Okay, must be in the core. So for this is only for DMC games. Another question is, I think this is a new question. I never found this question in existing publications. Okay. Now this question is, suppose Shapley value is in the core. So we have a nucleus, we have a Shapley value. A very natural question is, which allocation scheme should we use? Okay. Definitely, the V of n, the value of the grand collision is fixed. So the big pi, the pi is the fixed. So if we use Shapley value, if we use the nucleus, we compare them definitely. Some player get more from Shapley value, some people get more from nucleus. So my question is, which player gets more from Shapley value? Which player prefers to use Shapley value to allocate? Yeah. So this is our result. Now this result also is interesting. We find if the gap of one player, this player I's gap, is no greater than the gap of a collision n minus I, the complementary collision. Now we find if this player's gap is bigger than complementary collision's gap, so this person will get more from Shapley value. Okay, so this depends on each people's gap value, the gap value. this is a least core value, because DMC games possibly has empty core. Okay, the core could be empty. So very a typical solution concept for this for empty core game is least core and least core value. Okay, so this is the definition. For the DMC games with empty core, can we find solution? Can we find the least core value? My answer is yes. First one, for a DMC game with non-empty core, we already got the lower bound for least core value. So this is lower bound, and also under this condition, we have a closed form solution for least core value. Okay, so this is our result. But in this paper, our focus is not for DMC games with empty core, but our focus is for non-empty core case. Okay. Now next one, I provide 3 applications. I have sufficient time, right?
6 minutes.
Oh, okay. Now, first one is applications in airline and shipping area. So we consider code sharing game. Now, in my paper, I give the detailed discussions. I will provide many evidences to show how I constructed this model. Okay. Now, suppose we have because for each condition we should calculate the cost savings. Okay. Before cooperation and after cooperation, what the difference they have. So this is the cost saving. So each air company really has fixed cost and a variable cost. So we have this one. Now, before cooperation, each company deliver the service individually. So some of their cost is here. But after cooperation with code sharing scheme, they have this total cost. The difference is cost savings. Okay. Savings. Now we find for DMC games, if variable cost is a convex game, convex function, this game will be DMC games. And the next one, if this one is convex and also fixed cost is sufficiently large, this game has one empty core. Okay. Now I need to show this is practical or not. So I got this evidence from these 2 papers. Now they did empirical studies in these 2 papers. They showed, as usual, the fixed cost is large. And the next one, they mentioned marginal cost is usually increasing. Marginal cost increasing. I think this is convex. So this implies the variable cost is convex. So we are confident in reality, code sharing game is possible to be DMC game. It's possible. Okay. Now next one, second example is group buy-in game. So we use this existing model provided by some authors. Okay, this is because 2 or more parties will jointly order something, because if they jointly order something, their order quantity is large. They can enjoy a bigger quantity discount. Okay, so this is a global buy-in, and so this is a quantity discount model from existing publications. I use this one to analyze my problem. Okay, I calculate the cost savings also. And we will find the global buy-in is this parameter E. This is a parameter for steepness. Okay, steepness. Now, if E is bigger than or equal to 1, this game must be DMC game. Moreover, for every global buy-in game, that is DMC game, the core must be long-empty. Okay, long-empty. So I need to show under what condition value of E is bigger than 1. Okay. So I got the information from this paper. They did empirical study. They provide, they have estimates of value of parameter E. They estimate the parameter always falls in the range -1 to 1.6 based on their empirical study. So what does it mean? This means it is possible E value is bigger than 1. Okay, so it is possible group buy-in game is a DMC game. Okay, last one, scheduling, profit gain. Already?
No, wait. Just delivery is accelerated.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
You get extra time.
Okay, next one is scheduling profit again. I extended this game from existing papers by two scholars in MIT. They developed this game, but in that game, they made some assumptions. First assumption is there is no setup cost. This is the first assumption made by them. There is no setup cost. Now, second one is if one job is finished after deadline, this job will generate zero value. So this is their assumption. So I relaxed these two assumptions. First one, I assume there is a machine setup cost before processing each job. And second one is, I assume there is a timeliness loss. I didn't assume the profit is zero if the job is finished after deadline. Okay, so even if your job is finished after deadline, you still get some value, more or less value. So I assume this is timeliness lost. Okay. Now next one, with machine setup cost, the job timeliness loss. When I consider these two parameters, we will find the scheduling profit gain could be DMC gain, and also the core could be non-empty if this condition is satisfied. But if this depends on how large the setup cost will be, if this setup cost is very large, we will find the core is non-empty. Okay, non-empty. Oh, finally, this is a conclusion, summary of a conclusion of conclusions. Okay, so I just skip this part. Honestly speaking, this paper, our initial draft of this paper is very short. We just have an analytical solution of the nucleus for the ordinary DMC game. But later, after we adopt the rephrase recommendations, we did a lot. Extreme points, Shapley value, weighted nucleus, etc. We did a lot. All of these new materials was suggested by rephrase. Okay, rephrase. So, but after rephrase review this paper, some persons suggest that we should split this paper to several papers. This paper now is very long. Too many results. Okay, too many discussions. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Maybe time for one question.
Is there any relationship about super additivity?
Sorry?
Super additivity. Super additivity. Super additivity.
Is there any relationship with super additivity?
Oh, super. Oh, okay. Now, what I have already shown for this game is this game is super additive with respect to grand collision. Only at this level, this is super additive. Not super additive for any collision.
Okay, so this is cohesive game.
Yeah, right. So
is the DMC condition a little bit of dual to convexity of a game? Is convexity can be understood as increasing returns to operation?
Yeah, good question. Okay, this is also a question asked by one referee. Okay. Now let me go back to the definition. Okay. Oh, sorry, this definition. Now, the difference is only here. Now, if we include empty set here, this is the same as a submodular convex submodular game. But if we consider this one different from a submodular.
Okay, maybe further questions in the break or during lunch. Okay, thank you again. Okay, and our next speaker is and she will talk about incentives and emission responsibility in supply chain. Okay, right? Is the stages.
Thank you. So this work started after Felipe Caro from UCLA gave a talk at USC. One of his slides reminded me of a presentation that my advisor then Renaud gave when I was a PhD student. And a few months later, Danny and Frida came to spend the semester in the sabbatical at USC, and then I remember this presentation. And so we started working on this problem. And after discussion, there was some actual work that needed to be done, and this is why we included our PhD students, Kai, Wang, and Sanchez, because somebody has to do the work. So we heard a lot about game theory, but not so much about emissions and some other things. So just a brief introduction about some of the related things which motivated this. So we hear more and more talking about greenhouse gases, and in general what we measure, when the company measures when they want to evaluate their carbon footprint, is either their overall organizational carbon footprint or the product carbon footprint. And this is just going to be the carbon dioxide equivalents of different greenhouse gases that impact the environment. So we are looking either after a time period within the company's life and all their emissions, or what happens with the product from the start raw material until it's being disposed of. Now, the companies clearly, if they want to curb the amount of emissions that is going out, they need to invest some money. So unless they are penalized for putting the emissions out, they don't really have an incentive to do anything because it costs them money. And so the economists are recommending some sort of polluters pay mechanisms, and different countries have adopted different methods. So it's either carbon tax, where you can emit as much as you want, but you have to pay a certain fee for every ton of CO2 that you put out there. Or it's cap and trade, where there is a limit on the total amount of carbon emissions, and each company gets certain allocation, either free or they have to pay for it. And if they emit more than this, they have to get the additional allowances, which they do either to carbon offsets or they trade on the carbon market. And so for both of these mechanisms, so one important thing is how to figure out what should be either the price of the carbon tax or the limit if we are talking about cap and trade. And the other is how do we actually account who is responsible for what? Like how do we determine which company is responsible for what emissions? So for instance, this is one example of iPhone supply chain. So Apple is located in California, and it's making the products that we all use, iPhones, Macs, and so on. And we can see that the supply chain is quite global, like different parts come from different parts of the world. And nothing is actually being done in California, so Apple is not really doing anything in the headquarters except designing new products and thinking about their marketing campaigns. And if you look at, let's say, iPhone 8, the total emissions from the life cycle of iPhone 8 from raw material extraction until disposal, it's about 57 kilos of CO2, and this is how different materials are being used and so on. And the question is now, who is responsible for this? Is the glass manufacturer, is the assembler, is the kind of aluminum extractor, are they responsible, or should the Apple be responsible? So when we do these calculations, whether it's for carbon tax or for carbon trade, what share of this actually should Apple be responsible for? And at the moment, Apple is not responsible for any of this. So, like, this is all done by somebody else, and I will just mention it. So Apple is just responsible for its direct emissions, which doesn't account for any of these guys. And so the second thing which is important is how do we account for actual counting the exact emissions that are being put out there? Because, for instance, if we see this, So if Apple reports all of this, and if the company, let's say, is making Logic or Samsung are reporting their emissions, how do we make sure that we don't count twice or 3 times of the emissions? How do we know what is the actual amount of emissions that is being put out there? And so the greenhouse gas protocol is recommending that when companies do their reporting, they categorize emissions into 3 different scopes. So scope 1 are direct emissions that are generated by a company itself, by their own operation. So it's a company vehicles and company facilities. Scope 2 is all electricity which is not manufactured by the company. So if you have your own solar panels, it doesn't count as scope 2, but all the electricity you purchase comes under scope 2. And scope 3 is everything else. So scope 3 is coming from your suppliers and from your customers, kind of looking at the entire supply chain. And so everything that is within scope 3 should be reported by somebody else as their scope 1 or their scope 3. But by categorizing it separately, you can try to make sure that we are not double counting things. So reporting company is just kind of doing scope 1 as their own emissions. And at the moment, this is what actually the companies are being charged for. So just for their direct emissions, the scope 1 emissions. Now, if you look at, let's say, all different places where iPhone was being made, so clearly there are some areas in which a lot of emissions are being put out because of the iPhone. And so now the question is it right that Apple is not responsible for any of this, or should they be responsible for some of it? And maybe that should motivate them, for instance, to pick the suppliers in smarter ways, that suppliers invest a little bit in reducing their emissions and so on. And so what we try to do is to move away from this current model, which just assumes that whoever is making something has to pay for it. And so we try to model this as a game. And so in our game, because I did a graph in which each node is a member of the supply chain. And so there are arcs coming, and on each arc we have some emissions. So this is kind of the weight of the arc AI, and this emission is being used in our cost game. And so what we do is we are looking at the node from which the arc is going out as a supply chain member with his direct emissions, but we also allow for indirect responsibility. In a way, if a company can impact emissions from some of the other members, they can be assigned in the responsibility for those arcs and for those emissions. So for instance, if this is a simple graph, a simple supply chain, and if you look, let's say, at node 3, so the emissions 3 on the arc coming out of node 3 will be direct responsibility for node 3. But let's say that node 7 is supplier to node 3, and node 3 is selecting materials and so on. So we can say that node 3 is indirectly responsible for the emission 6 that are coming out of node 7. So we can look at some kind of direct and indirect responsibility. And now clearly the question is how are these responsibility assigned? So what we assume in our model is that we have a strong member in the supply chain, which would be a dominant player, who is doing this type of assignment. And so direct emissions are clearly assigned to the nodes directly. So this is what you are responsible for directly. But we assume that this dominant player can also work on assigning some responsibility for scope 2 and scope 3 emissions to supply chain members if they can influence the emissions in these nodes. As it says here, for instance, by making material selection, helping the suppliers improve their operations, reduce emissions, and so on. So does this make sense? So there are some examples in which companies are doing some similar things. So for instance, Walmart is a retailer, so most of the emissions in Walmart supply chain don't happen at Walmart. So Walmart is responsible for about 10%, everything else is happening upstream. But Walmart started asking their suppliers to measure their emissions suppliers actually found out that just the act that they have to go and evaluate their emissions made them more aware of what is happening, and they started to put some efforts into reducing the emissions in their own supply chains. A similar thing like Microsoft is a few years ago started doing accounting for emissions in their internal supply chains and charging different business units for their emissions. So they use it again to invest in reducing emissions in Microsoft supply chain, but just this collection of information and reporting incentivize the companies to start, the business units to start doing something about emission reduction. So this is the motivating story and everything behind it, and so let's move to some of the game theoretical concepts. So these make these are much more necessary when I don't talk to game theoretic people, when I talk to business people which do not know so much. So this is just a regulation. So we are looking at the cost game, and we assume we call this the clean game, and the cost of the collision is just the sum of the emissions generated on the arts, for which at least some of the members from S are responsible for directly or indirectly. So core allocations, we all know what it is, so I don't have to go into definition. And the convex gain just means that if we are looking at contributions to larger or to small coalitions, so the contribution to a larger coalition should be smaller because some of the costs are already accounted for the other members. Now, additional definition that I need is the Shapley value, which we encounter every day, and I think almost every talk that we heard, so I don't need to spend a lot of time here. One important thing for our case, which was not talked about much, is additivity. So additivity is the property that we are going to use later. I'm talking about how this is applied on more general cases. And this is just the definition that we have seen on many slides already. So clearly, when we were looking at how to allocate things, the first thing coming from game theory is that Shapley value would be a good candidate for something like this. And so some of the cons of using the Shapley value is that it in general doesn't have to belong to the core, and calculation can be difficult. So when we look at the larger sets of players, it may not be the most practical thing to do, so we may want to look at some approximations. But the good things about Shapley value is that it's being perceived as a fair, so it is used in many cases in cost allocation. And if the game is convex, then it does belong to the core, so which is good because then it continues with this additional fairness from coming, that comes from core belonging. And so when we look at our game on allocations of emissions, so we first, just by the definition of the game, we find it's convex, which is good because it means it has a non-empty core, so we can easily find calculations that are fair. And it can be easy to compute sometimes, and we avoid double counting. So with the core allocation, we have efficiency, which means we will not have some of the emissions accounted for twice. In addition, because game is convex, then the Shapley value does belong to the core, which is a good thing in this case. And now we come to what actually started me thinking about Danny when I saw the talk that was given by Felipe, which was this graph, like variation of this graph that Danny gave when I was a student, which was looking at how to allocate the maintenance cost at the airport if we know the cost of each of the runways, so the maintenance cost of each of the runways, and the different parts are being used by different companies. So the first part, which costs 10, is used by all 5 of the companies that use the airport. The branch with the weight 3 is used only by company A. The branch with the weight 2 is used by B and C, and so on. So there are different companies using different segments. And what was being shown is that it's very easy to find the Shapley value for this case. So we just divide the cost of each segment by the number of the companies that are using this segment and add all of these things together and we get a Shapley value. So this is one example in which Shapley value is extremely easy to calculate. It belongs to the form. And so this is actually what can be done with our problem if we are looking at the tree structure. So this was kind of good. So we started with something that we guessed would be a good allocation, and we showed that it is actually easy to calculate in this case, and so on. But then we were thinking, so what if there is something better? So this is just like what we know from theoretical part, but if we actually look at emission allocation, are there some of the properties that we would want this type of allocation to have? And so our first thing was like no free ride. So what we wanted is if the total pollution changes, but for some firms nothing changed, those firms for which nothing changed should not benefit from this. So for instance, if this is let's say this is the original graph, and let's say that nodes 3 and 1 are both the only ones responsible for the emissions of 3 and 2 on the path from 3 to 1 to 0. Now, in this case, let's say they split this weight equally, so 5 split in 2, each is getting 2.5. Now, suppose that 3 and 1 work together and they reduce this 3 down to 1, so they reduce the emissions. So what we are saying now is that this reduction should only be split by 3 and 1, so their allocation should go to 1.5 each, and nothing should change for the rest of the plants. The second one is firm equivalence, so if the two firms are responsible for the same set of polluting processes, their allocation should be the same. And so this is, like, as I said, if 3 and 1 are the only one responsible for these two arcs, they should each be allocated 1.5. And the third one is the nullity, is the firm is not responsible for anything, its allocation should be 0. So these are just some of the regular fairness properties, but then we were looking at some additional things that should be relevant for pollution allocation. And so the first one, it sounds like a little bit messy, so it's process history independent. And what it means is we want that if something changes on one of the arcs, it should reflect, its reflection on the allocation of other firms should not depend on the level of pollution in the other arcs. So what it means is, let's look first at the first 1A and 1B. So what we have here is that on the segment or the arc from 2 to 1, the pollution went down from 8 to 4. So this will cause some reduction in allocation to player 2 and perhaps some others if they're responsible for this. What this property says that if we look at the second set of graphs, 2A and 2B, they are the same except that pollutions on all the arcs except this one are double. And what this property says that the change in allocation due to this reduction from 8 to 4 should be the same in both of these cases. So why can this be relevant in our game? So the thing is that sometimes if the change in allocation depends on the level of pollution in other arcs, then a company may say, okay, I will wait until I invest in emission reduction until these guys change something, because then my impact will be bigger and my allocation will be bigger. By making this kind of independent of what is happening in other arcs, we can think it gives an incentive to firms to not to wait for the others, but to start to reducing pollution as early as possible. And the second one is what also happens sometimes is that firms can come up with kind of, let's say, distributor, a new entity, new business entity that doesn't actually do anything in terms of pollution, but can be used to reduce the allocation of emissions. And so we wanted to avoid this type of gaming. And so we say, for instance, if we have the first graph, and let's say node 4 decided to split itself into node 4 prime and 4 double prime, where 4 prime has the same allocation, the same pollution as node 4, and 4 double prime creates 0 pollution, then the total allocation to 4 prime and 4 double prime should be the same as the original allocation to node 4. And so these are some of the properties that we thought would make sense in our context of pollution allocation. And so what we found is that the Shapley value is the only one that actually satisfies simultaneously firm equivalence and nullity, which are fairness properties and process history independence. So it's encouraging the firms to start investing in the reduction of pollution as early as possible. And the second, also Shapley value is the only one that satisfies simultaneously firm equivalence, no free riding, and segregation variance. So again, we have some fairness and some incentive to prevent the gaming by the company in order to try to get a lower portion of allocation. Okay, so this was the second justification for using Shapley value. And then we want to say, okay, let's look at the business case. So if you want to sell this to the government to try to get their help in pushing this and implementing this, can we get some arguments there? And so we wanted to see what kind of allocation can actually provide more incentive to companies to work on abatement of their emissions, to work on reducing their emissions. And so the original paper that I mentioned that motivated this by Felipe and his co-authors assume that each firm can introduce abatement efforts for emissions that it's responsible for. And there are some properties on the functions, the cost functions and emission functions. And the societal cost, let's say the carbon tax, is fixed. And what they show in their paper is that if we want to achieve the first best emission reduction effort, then there has to be some double counting. So we cannot get first best result unless there is some double counting of emission by different parties. So what we want to do is to focus on cases in which there is no double counting. So we want to get the true accounting of emissions. So for the first best, we are looking at the total cost of abatements and the cost of emissions. And for the decentralized model, what we assume that each player is looking at his own efforts at reducing emissions, plus his share of societal cost of emissions. And these shares are being determined by a family of linear allocation rules. So among the family of linear allocation rules, we wanted to find the ones which would not lead to double counting, so that would be put in balance, and it would be the best in the social play. And so what we found is that if players have private information for the cost functions, then again Shapley value is actually working quite well, because it would minimize the maximum deviation from the socially optimal pollution level. So we would not be able to get first best without how to work on trees. This is what we started from, with a tree where we can calculate the Shapley value rather easily. And so what happens if we have like supply chains with more general structures, which is usually the case. You don't really have a tree for your supply chain. So this looks like a simple case, but it is actually not a tree, and it becomes a little bit messier. So for instance, if we want to calculate emissions for the node 3, let's say responsibility for node 3, its allocation, we can see that, assume that it's responsible indirectly for node 5. So we can see that some of the emissions from node 5 will go towards 3, but some will go around to node 2 and circumvent the node 3. So how do we decide what is the responsibility of node 3 in this case? So this is clearly what happens also with companies. And so for instance, there are companies, let's say shoemaking companies, which wanted to actually account for allocations of emissions in their supply chain. So they buy leather, which is a big factor in emissions, from the cattle growers, and they ask them, okay, like what should we account for emissions? And the cattle growers said, well, these cows are being grown for meat anyway, so you can just assume this leather is free. But these guys did not want to do it, so they said, okay, let's look at the value of the cow and what portion is going to the leather, what portion is going to meat, and take our allocation that way. And so they got, I think, for about 8% or something when they calculate the emissions. So it's not something that companies are not doing, and so this is something that we propose it can be done here as well. So let's say if this is a cattle grower, we can split the emissions from cow to leather and to meat, and we can then split this graph into two graphs, which are called tree graphs, and we can calculate Shapley value for each of these two graphs separately, and then add them together. And so we can kind of use this property of Shapley value when we are looking at the more complex graphs to split the graphs into different tree graphs and allocate the emissions according to their origins and their use. And so this is more or less what I wanted to present. So we're looking at how to construct the game and to find a way of allocating emissions which is a little bit better than just to assign the direct emissions to a company. And we found several different arguments that show that Shapley value should be something that can be used. So arguments that work for fairness, for the ease of implementation, for motivation to actually reduce emissions. And we hope it will actually be implemented at some point. I like to show this graph, for instance. This is showing emissions, carbon emissions in the world. And for instance, if you look at China, you can see the stick arrows going out. And these arrows show the amount of emissions that is going, generated in this country, going to different countries. So you can see that about 400 megatons of emissions generated in China are being used for products sold in the US, and about 300 for Europe and about 200 for Japan. So like all of these emissions generated in China are going somewhere else, and China is being responsible for that, which may not be kind of completely justified, because if the customers in these other countries did not demand these products, the emissions would not be generated. So by looking at some allocations to Shapley value, we can probably be able to get some incentives for Apple or for some other companies doing business with China to push China to work on reducing emissions and create less pollution. So that's all that I can. So if there are any questions.
Okay, thank you. I think we have time for a question here.
Thanks. I was wondering what you do with supply chains that in the Modera form, in which they are still directed graphs, but they can also have flukes. Because I can imagine situations in which truck company builds trucks, but then the oil which is used to produce them is transported to the trucks. And so
we try to make these graphs, decompose the graphs so that we can create the same entity for different
graphs are loops.
So in some cases we can create a separate entity, so they can be a tracking company in different parts, but we can kind of separate it as entities that are. So imagine this company can do this. So
I understand the example that you gave, it just no loops. But if there is a loop, I'm not sure that actually you can still rely on it.
well, in some cases that we have to do the more complex, but I think in many cases we can do something like this, kind of use additivity, or try to create some artificial entities to kind of split some of the processes so that we can have different.
I guess each loop should be an artificial entity, because you have to repackage the graph in things.
So try to play a little bit if you want to make it simple.
It seems to have some similarity with the other two river problems.
Yes, so that's.
But they consider allocations in both directions, upstream equal sharing and downstream equal sharing. And you seem to have it in one direction. Does the other direction make sense?
Also, but we say that there is the responsibility can be allocated, so I can. So we use, let's say, example of Google is allocated responsibility. So they can be assigned responsibility, some of the members for the upstream members. You can work with some of your suppliers. You can also have some downstream responsibility. You can provide better instructions for your customers.
Okay, allocate down or okay, thank you again.